Amadachiapi, Nick Tilsen, Amachiapi, Chantea, Washtena Pechuzapalo. You are listening to LANDBACK for the People, Season 3. We are fired up here. It is in the middle of summer, going into fall, in the height of ceremonial season here in Osheti Shakoi lands. And then coming at you right here from the studio in Mini Luzaha on the north side here at the NDN Collective headquarters. As we are in the middle of ceremonial season, Sundance season, Hamblecha, Honka ceremonies, all the things that are happening, all the healing that's taking place throughout our homelands, and really all throughout the indigenous world during the summer months, around the solstice and on. There's so much healing that happens. We wanted to have a special show and a special guest here on this particular show. And we're going to talk about the cross intersection of LANDBACK and healing, and LANDBACK's relationship to healing intergenerational trauma. And one of those big areas of opportunity for both LANDBACK and healing is the work that is happening around the boarding schools and healing from the boarding schools. And right here in Rapid City, there has been an effort going on for a number of decades. At one time, there was a boarding school right here in Rapid City. And after that boarding school was shut down, that land was taken over by the city and used for different things. And there's been an effort to reclaim that land and put it back to use for the people. And that was led by our elders and led by women and led by leaders here in this community. And two of those leaders are going to be on the show today. Amy Sauze, she's the executive director for Remembering the Children and has led the effort of building a memorial on the actual land that people fought to get back, to remember the children and the children's lives that were lost and buried in the land where the boarding school once was. And it has been a hard journey and a spiritual journey to get to this point. But it has provided some healing. It has provided a way to have a conversation about what the truth has been of what happened to Indian people, while at the same time allowing both survivors and family members to have a place to go to heal and to remember their ancestors, to remember their relatives whose lives were lost as a result of the boarding schools. It also is an acknowledgement that this land was returned, beginning to turn for its rightful owners. And that one of the themes you'll hear today that Amy will also talk about is that when land is returned back to Indian people are going to do some incredible things with it and be good caretakers of it and use it for the purpose of healing and reconciliation. And so you'll hear from her. You'll also hear from Dr. Valeriah Big Eagle, who has played a vital role. She's the director of He Sapa Initiatives here at NDN Collective, but she has been a longtime leader in this community and helped tremendously on the boarding school lands effort. And so you hear from these two powerful women telling this story. And it is an incredible journey, and it is part of the fabric of this community, and it is deeply intertwined with LANDBACK and the effort to return stolen native lands, stolen indigenous lands back into indigenous hands. And it has the ability to catalyze a conversation forward around reconciliation, but it must be founded in truth and it must be founded in healing. So we will get into it today. LANDBACK for the People, Season 3, Remembering the Children. are LANDBACK for the People, Season 3. We have Amy Sauze, Executive Director of Remembering the Children. And we have Sister Dr. Valeriah Big Eagle, the Director of He Sapa Initiatives here at NDN Collective. It's awesome to have both of you on, and I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Yeah, good morning, and thank you for having me. I'm Amy Sauze, Sichangu and Oglala Lakota. I'm the Executive Director of the Remembering the Children Memorial. Was a volunteer, part of the volunteer team, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the show, but been involved with the project for about 7 years and really honored to be in the role that I am, in the position that I am now, to carry it forward and then start the work of dreaming, visioning for the future. So glad to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Awesome.
I'm Petu Ashte, and in my role, yes, I'm Director of He Sapa Initiatives, Valeriah Big Eagle, Hangtawan Dakota Nakota. But in this project, I'm just simply a volunteer, a community member, and started working alongside Sister Amy in 2018, and really just uplifting this work, this story, and just, as I said, as a community member. And so really happy to see the progress of the project and excited to share that story today.
Awesome. Well, before we get into the whole story, I have to ask, you're both Sichangu and Oglala. So does that mean do you get shit from both sides?
It means I get to laugh at all the jokes.
Hey, there you go. All right.
Pulls them out wherever I'm at.
For the listeners and the viewers out there, the Sichangu and the Oglala are different bands of the Lakota, and our favorite pastime is teasing each other.
Roasting each other.
So that's why I was like, holy man, she either gets to laugh all the time or she gets to be the brunt end of the jokes all the time.
You use all the jokes. Flip them.
Yeah.
Well, so, this show is about LANDBACK, and it's about the LANDBACK movement, and it's about this effort to reclaim, indigenous lands and return them back to indigenous hands. And often the effort and the work to do that gets kind of polarized because a lot of people are scared of LANDBACK. They think, oh man, when Indians get their land and get it back, it's going to be bad for us. When in all actuality, as indigenous people, we don't want to repeat the same injustices that were done upon us to other people, because our values tell us not to be that way. Our teachings tell us to be good relatives. And the thing I really love about this whole story is, and the story of the boarding school lands work, is it's a modern LANDBACK story that a lot of people don't know around the country. And also at the center of this story is about healing. It's about truth. It's about reconciliation. And it's an exemplary example of what happens when a community organizes themselves to contribute to truth and reconciliation and healing. And so I both want to commend both of you and all of the people who worked on this effort, for really several decades now, that led to where we're at now. But for the listeners out there and the viewers out there, Can you tell the story, the background story of the Rapid City Boarding School lands work, and the work that kind of ended up leading to the creation of the Remembering the Children Memorial? Yeah,
and that was at the point that Val and I both got involved, and we're actually able to see how it worked and how it takes a community to make stuff like this happen. So this story started in 2017. They were doing an anniversary for the Susan campus, celebrating. They had some community events and some feeds, and they were collecting anecdotal stories. And one of our teammates, one of our colleagues, Kibby Brown, was part of that effort. She was worked at the Susan for years.
Just for folks outside of the Miniluzhan area, what's Susan and just give them a little background.
So they were doing these community events, celebrating, talking about the history of this site in Rapid City. And during those events, elder women came up and said, well, what are they going to do if they build a new center, new building? What are they going to do about the graves? And so Kibby heard it twice, and she said she didn't really understand what they were talking about, and started visiting with one of her friends who, at the time was actually using her Bush fellowship and on hiatus from work. And so she started visiting with Heather Dawn Thompson. Heather's a lawyer, and was like, let's take some time and dig into that and see. And initially the research started with trying to identify the boundaries, like where could they be? There's no knowledge of any of that, and it's not posted anywhere in Rapid City. You can't go anywhere and find the history of Indian people here in this community. And so that started the research. What they found out was that the school was 1,400 acres. So it currently sits on, I think, a 27-acre plot. But it was 1,400 acres, and it encompassed most of the west side of Rapid City. Think about 1,400 acres in blocks, and or in shopping centers, and it's huge. It's a lot of land.
And this is a federally funded.
Yep, it was funded. A BIE boarding school at the time, so federal boarding school. Those are funded per pupil, so they recruited all over the place to try to get kids. And so this story started there. They were researching, found some information that nobody was familiar with, didn't really make sense, and started recruiting a team. So Heather started reaching out, asking people, getting people involved, and that turned into getting more people involved. I don't even know how, really, at what point. I know I was contacted a couple times. We all were, to help with presentations and the research and stuff, but it just turned into a bigger story. So what we found was that at this site, so the Rapid City Indian Boarding School was in operation from 1898 to 1933. Then it closed and turned into a TB sanatorium until the early 1950s, where it transitioned into an IHS. And that was all based on advocacy from this community. Indian women reaching out to senators and congressmen and saying, there's enough Indian people in Rapid, we want our treaty rights here. They wanted a hospital. And so it transitioned into an IHS hospital, and is now, just recently, that also transitioned into a 638, and that's the Oyate Health Center now. So that site is the kind of impetus of this story. And what we found was that about 50 kids died while they were in school. That was one thing we were looking at, what age or what era of the school did deaths occur. So boarding school, we know that deaths occurred at that time. TB sanatorium was similar, and IHS had inpatient. But we found out that it was students, it was children, it was boarding school. So then we started searching for graves. What we found was that out of the 50 children that died, there's about 5 of them whose graves haven't been located. So there are 5 children that died at the school that we don't know where they're buried. How we came to the Remembering the Children Memorial site was when they were looking at maps, trying to figure out where these graves could be. They actually zoomed out of the 1,400 acres that Susan sat on, and there's 24 acres in that 1,400 acres that is completely undeveloped. And it just kind of begged the question, why? And we started looking into it and found that this parcel of land, nobody had ever sold it, bought it, but it had exchanged hands within the federal government. And so we started looking for why. So what we found was oral histories, stories from the community about graves up there, about parents and grandparents of staff at the school or at Susan sharing stories about seeing children carried up to the hill, and that they had there's children that had to help bury them. So we have stories of children helping to carry somebody wrapped in a white sheet up to the top. And so looking into that land, that 24 acres, we actually had a pretty large legal team in this volunteer. So this team of volunteers is a group of, I always think about it, we are our ancestors' dreams. We have lawyers and architects and teachers and doctorates and people in the Hall of Fame and Bush Fellows. We have, and all the way down to community members who didn't know any of it but wanted to help. And what we did as a group, as a team, was figure out how to get that land back into the hands of the tribes, and work with the BIA at the time to get that done. And so the Remembering the Children Memorial Site is built on 24 acres of land that was former boarding school land that our team, this legal team, the Rapid City Indian Boarding School Lands Project, helped the Rosewood Sioux Tribe, Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, Oglala Sioux Tribe get that 24 acres put into federal trust. And we are working in partnership with the 3 tribes to build the site and then administer whatever services and programming comes onto the site. And so looking for graves turned into finding about some land inequities that were included. We call it the inconvenient truth because one of the former mayors of Rapid City literally was like, "That's inconvenient," and we're like, "Yep, it is, but it's the truth." And we were fortunate that mayor at that time leaned into it and was just like, "People have to know this. Like, how do people not know this? You know, as a community, nobody knew, but Indian people, Indian elders, they knew." Yeah. And everything that we heard from them has been substantiated one way or another. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this project. And it's something that we already know as Indigenous people. We know that our oral histories and that stories that our aunties and grandmas tell us there's truth to them. And we believe it. And as a team, that was one thing. We were just like the oral histories. The other thing we did was bring spiritual leaders to the site. And they said, there are children here. There's somebody running over their graves. You need to protect this land. And that was what really drove us to help get that land put into trust, was to protect the land and the children that were there. The other thing that we decided at that time was that we didn't want to let them be forgotten again. And so this story, it kind of went away from, honestly, the 70s, 80s, 90s. It was pretty quiet. There's organizations that kept trying to access the land, so like they knew about it, but it just wasn't really public knowledge. I mean, it's really powerful. It's healing to hear those stories validated and to see people's words ring true when we know that for years they were ignored and they were purposefully ignored, silenced, forgotten. And to be able to bring that story to life and to put it on our website, on signage at the site, and to validate and acknowledge the contributions, the local history that our people carry for this land, not necessarily Rapid City, but the Mini Luzahan area has always been somewhere that was special, that was treasured by our people. And so we're really proud to kind of validate that, elevate it, not validate it, maybe just elevate it to the level of importance that it is to us. And so it's been a long journey.
and it's created all this conversation in the community. I mean, the inconvenient truth, you know. I think that's so many times we get gaslit, you know, as Indigenous people, that what happened to us, our lived experience, what happened to our ancestors gets downplayed, erased. And even when we are trying to address the impacts of that, the intergenerational trauma, you know, science tells us, that's not a thing. Yeah. You know, when the reality is what we know it to be different. And I think that's what's incredible about this project is these children and what happened to them became the catalyzer for change and for truth and for reconciliation. So Val, from your perspective of just being a member of this community and watching the evolution of this body of work, how have you seen that impact both the Native community here, and also how have you seen it impact the non-Native community in this endeavor?
So this work, what it has done for our Native community, it has allowed people to tell the story, like Sister Amy was talking about, to tell their stories, their histories of what happened. Because quite a bit, like throughout history, what we found, even in Sioux Ad families, is that just being ignored. And so allowing that space and time to hear those stories and say, yes, this is what happened, and allowing that healing to happen. And so that's huge. Because quite frequently in our community, as we know as Racist City, they shove us under the rug. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear our ancestors' truth. And so in part of that conversation, like talking with our allies, we call them allies, they're non-natives, but they recognize how even in previous histories, like what happened at Rapid City Indian Boarding School, it was not okay, but they could be part of the solution, so they could do something good. And so like with the remembering the children, remember their children, and the project, one of the biggest partners in this project was Canyon Lake Methodist Church. And in part of our history, when it comes to the church and comes to boarding schools and all of the things, they recognized that they were part of that hurt. And so it allowed them to be able to be good relatives and to recognize and validate our stories and to be part of that healing with us. And so now what you see with our non-Native allies, our community, is you see them telling the story. And now it's not just us. It's not just us saying this is what happened to us. It's our allies saying this is what happened in our community, and we should care because this is our community and we want to do better. And so that's something that we have seen, you know, being part of this project. And we see this healing that is taking place and continues, you know. And so this work, like we know what happened to our people, it'll take a long, long time to heal from that. However, this is starting that conversation, starting that healing journey in our community. And it's so important. Our children see it. And so we kind of talked about that too, of how this project even helped us as volunteers, as community members, like being better mothers. You know, we had the opportunity to sit with elders and listen and learn and to recognize, like, how can we heal for ourselves to be better mothers, to be better fathers, aunts, uncles, relatives. And so with that, it even had us like look internally at ourselves. We recognize how we're helping heal from residential boarding schools, such as what happened at Rapid City Indian Boarding School. And so we talked about this, and we did, you know, like the importance of knowing our history, but also grounding our children and in who they are. You know, making sure they have their Lakota names, making sure that they know our ceremonial way of life and learning the language and all of these things. And so that's so important for us too. And we recognize that, and I recognize that as a mother.
Yeah, this story, I mean, we're always, you know, in the LANDBACK movement and the LANDBACK work, we're always trying to find stories that continue to contextualize what we're talking about. Because a lot of times people think it's just about land, when the reality is it's about reclaiming the things that we're taking from us as a people, as, you know, reclaiming decision-making power over, you know, our children's education, you know, reclaiming, you know, our food systems to grow our own food and feed our own families and provide for our children. But also the role that it has to play in healing and reconciliation, because, and it's really the thing that I've always latched onto and loved about the call for LANDBACK is because it pushes the issue. It requires us. In many ways, it's like a mirror. We're holding a mirror up to this country, where that if you're going to have a conversation about truth and reconciliation with Indigenous people and the first people of this land, that you're going to have to talk about our relationship to land, and in particular pieces of land, what happened there? How was it stolen? What was it used for? How was it being used now? How do we create a path forward? And this story and this body of work that you and others have engaged in is remarkable. I mean, it's a remarkable story that tells this effort of actually getting land back, and then actually doing something with the land that ends up creating a platform for healing. And it's like a connector. And I like what you said at the beginning, is that at some point, ancestors prayed for this truth to come out. They put tobacco on the ground. They poured water in that ground. They asked Tunkashila. And it just so happened to be you and others were some of the answers to that prayers. And that's beautiful. And that's the thing that I love about this story, is that it's a continuum, and LANDBACK has always been about a continuum, that we're on this continuum of both resistance but also healing from the generations before us. So we'll get in jumping more into the nuts and bolts of the actual memorial here in a few minutes.
Moshte, Chicago.
Moshte.
In case you missed it, 2024 was a big year for NDN Collective. To share some exciting victories and stories, we recently published our 2024 Impact Report, Working for the People. In this report, you can learn about how we trained more than 200 people in 15 Indigenous communities in nonviolent direct action and organized for the successful release of Lekshi Leonard Peltier. Through the NDN Foundation, we were able to repatriate more than $26.9 million in grant funding directly back to Indigenous artists, change makers, and organizations that are leading important and solution-based work in their own communities. We also successfully returned 475 acres of land back to Indigenous people. Since it began, NDN Fund closed 12 loans that led to the development of 7 safe and affordable housing units, created 815 jobs, and supported land back wins across 5 different projects. You could read all about these victories and more in our 2024 Impact Report, Working for the People, on our website, and the link is in the description below.
So this whole endeavor and this whole effort was only possible because of advocacy, and particularly advocacy of grandmas, particularly advocacy of grandmas that were actually boarding school survivors.
Yeah.
Who brought this forward. Can you talk about that a little bit, about these grandmas and these boarding school survivors who were said, we're gonna fight to make sure that the truth comes out about this?
What we found is that Congress issued a statute in 1948 dictating how that land could be distributed. So the 1,400 acres, as soon as the school closed, the local community wanted it. So west side of Rapid City, hills, lots of natural resources close to water. The local community wanted it. What they did was lobby local leadership. Local leadership realized right away that they didn't have jurisdiction. So they went to Congress. They got a senator to carry it for them. Senator Francis Case took it to Congress, and Congress issued a statute in 1948. What that statute said was that there were 4 entities that could get the land for free, subject to reversion. So that was the school district. The Rapid City area schools got Canyon Lake Elementary, West Middle School, and Stevens High School out of the deal. The city of Rapid City was eligible, and they got all of the green space. So Whitehead, all the softball or baseball fields down there, Sioux Park, that was all farmlands. I actually have a picture from the creek looking up to the school, and it's all flat down there, like right where that the Whitehead field is. So the city got all of that green space. The National Guard, so the U.S. government got the most. They got all that National Guard land. So that guard camp back there, and their facility by Black Hills Works, that's all from boarding school lands. The other group that could get some land subject to reversion was quote unquote needy Indians. So needy Indians didn't get, and we always do this in a slide, we'll show the city of Rapid City, they got this much, this is what they did with it, National Guard, and then we'll get to needy Indians and we'll show a blank slide, because that's how much land the Indians got in this town. The other group that could get that land was churches, and it was they had to purchase it at reasonable fee, which is literally pennies on the dollar. Like, churches have come up to us and said that they made a 900% profit on the land that they purchased at that time.
A 900%
900% profit on that. And a lot of those churches never even occupied the land. They sold their tracts of their parcels in real estate deals, which is how a lot of the housing developments and housing came to be in that area. If anybody's interested in looking into some of that, that is on the Remembering the Children website. But going back to that statute was in the paper. It was public knowledge. The interesting thing about that statute was that the way it was going to be divvied up came out before the statute was issued. So we literally have newspaper articles saying the city being like, hey, we're going to get this land, and this is what we're going to do. The National Guard's going to get this land. They were celebrating. And so when this all became public, of course, Indian people in the community were also following along, listening, reading, and understanding what was going on. And so we have multiple proposals from Indian organizations that were trying to get access to that land, because they saw the statute that was published in the Rapid City Journal that lists Indian people as eligible to receive some of the boarding school lands. What we found was over the decades, so from 1948 all the way until, I think the last one was 1996, Indian organizations requesting access to that land. Those efforts were led largely by elder women. So we can't not shout out or acknowledge Cecilia Montgomery, Sharon Lizotte, Emma Amiot, Lizzie Fasthorse, Eva Nichols. We have letters from these women to congressmen, to senators saying, we know they're selling that land and that's not right, and we want to build housing. And the Indian orgs, all of the things that they were requesting land for were mutual aid, which is really in alignment with Lakota values and who we are and what we would do with land.
They wanted to take care of the people.
Yes, they wanted elderly housing and feeding. They wanted apartment complexes for children. Like they wanted housing.
An Indian center.
They wanted an arts and crafts museum. There's multiple proposals, all aimed at lifting up Indian people in this community. And so we go back to that story, acknowledging those women, those elder women, and they didn't hold back. They were, Bev Warren told us a story one time about seeing Eva Nichols hit somebody with her cane. She was so mad. And she said, don't let them trick you into thinking we're mean when we raise our voices or we speak clearly. And she said, I saw somebody get hit with a cane in an elevator before. Somebody could get mad about that, but what we're doing isn't negative. Right. We're not hostile and we're not mean. And Bev was the epitome of that. She could say exactly what she meant to say with a straight face, clearly straight right at you, and didn't sugarcoat it.
That wisdom and that fierceness, Right. And I think that sometimes people see Indigenous activism now, and it gets villainized. And the truth is, it's always been. Every time that Indigenous people are armed with education, armed with intellect, armed with strategy and innovation, then we become a threat, And that's probably why the government and other folks thought these elders were a threat too, is because they knew the truth. They were armed with the truth.
Yeah.
Because they lived through it.
Yep. They watched it. They experienced it. And so that legacy of advocacy has always been here. And call it what you want, but speaking up for your people, we have always done that. We've always been here in this community speaking that way. And
and it creates tangible results just like this.
Yes.
That's the thing too, right? Is like, not just speaking up for speaking up's sake, not just raising how. It's to move things forward. It's to create progress. It's to create
with intention.
With intentionality to create something, that creates a way for our people.
Yeah. We're really honored to bring their families. So we did some research, and I pulled a little Unji group together to help me figure out who all those women were. And so the Winona Club was kind of their hub, and they operated out of there, did a lot of things.
What was the Winona Club?
So the Winona Club was a civic group that was in operation in this community since, I think, like the 1940s, 50s. But they did things like they would do the welcoming new babies. They'd make blankets and quilts. They'd have clothing bazaars and stuff like that. One of the interesting things about the Winona Club that I read was that it was led by Indigenous women. And you'll see all these same names, Emma Amiot and Eva Nichols. All those women were heavily involved. And it was, they had non-Native women that worked with them, that quilted and sewed and liked to do these things. But the non-Native members of the Winona Club didn't have a vote. It was the Indian women that ran it. And I just think there's something powerful about that. There's something beautiful about that. And they knew what they were doing. And they set a very clear path for us. And that was something when we all kind of engaged in this and started hearing like, yeah, my grandma said that. We already knew that. Yeah, they said that. We heard that over and over and over. And so in the very beginning of this project, we got the blankets that we created in collaboration with Eighth Generation. And the first thing that we did was honor all of those women. And so we set up chairs. We put their pictures and their, an honor, a plaque for them, and then and some sage and a blanket. And we gifted all of their families a blanket and to acknowledge that, all the work that they did, and to say we acknowledge that we are standing on the shoulders of your mom, your grandma, and bringing them all together was really beautiful too. They grew up all knowing each other. All of their children were like, hey, when they'd see each other. And the funny thing is they talked about house meetings. We'd meet at so-and-so's house, or, hey, I remember you, your mom's Mary Wright. We used to meet over at your house, and the kids and grandkids. we're all like, this is cool. Thank you so much. And we're so proud of like how rowdy all their grandmas were. Literally, they were like, my grandma could feed 50 people, but also we were deathly afraid of her, you know? And it's like, that's who we are. That's the best of who we are. And so we acknowledge them, thank them. And then I literally asked permission to carry on that work in their name and to carry on this story, to say that we acknowledge that we aren't the first, and we aren't the ones that fixed everything and did all we did was pick up where they left off and take it as far as and we're going to take it as far as we can until our time's here, and then make sure that we are leaving a clear path for the next generation to pick it up and go do what they're going to do, whatever they need to bring healing and justice to this community and to our people.
Let's talk about that for a minute too. I mean, because I think this is intergenerational organizing, intergenerational advocacy, but at the center of all of that is this intergenerational healing. And a lot of times, it's starting to be more accepted, but like we have always understood as Indigenous people, as Lakota, Dakota people, the trauma is intergenerational. It's passed down, through our DNA. It's passed down through our spirits. It's passed down. And that every generation we're healing from the things that happen to our people. And in work like this, and this and endeavors like this, really bring that stuff to the surface. And it's hard. It brings a lot of pain because people don't realize with the truth, it's not just about saying, hey, this injustice happened. You need to be held accountable for it. It's about this happened. And there's pain attached to all of these children who were taken away from their families and who died there. Who some of them didn't even have a ceremony. They were just put in the ground. And those were lives lost, families not, continued, stories unfinished, Can you talk a little bit about intergenerational trauma and intergenerational healing and how this has created a pathway? Because clearly there's a lot more healing to happen, but from what I can tell, is that this has created a pathway and a platform for that to happen. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit and how that's been a foundational sort of through thread, this whole time?
One thing that we can talk about is, one of the most important messages I think we got in all of this work was that historic trauma is real. And Bev Warren was really clear about naming it and saying epigenetics. And being like, it is a science, it's documented, we are the documentation. And acknowledging that and not being afraid to say that, and to say that she understood a lot of what she experienced in her life, and her generation, was because of trauma, and that it became part of us. And on the other side of that, when you think about, so the trauma we understand. One thing I've come to understand is I can see, where the, in our families, where the impetus of that trauma is our great-grandparents and our grandparents and our parents. We can see it. We all, we feel it. We know it. It's part of all of us, but having that acknowledged, I think, in a generational way, being like, no, this has affected people, and this has affected you and your children, and it's real. And also, like, saying there's another part of it, and that's acknowledging too that this trauma has created some of the social conditions that we see today, and understanding that these people, that this hurt is so deep and so deeply ingrained in some of our people that they can't find sobriety, or they can't make it through their mental health addictions or their issues, and but understanding that the why, I think, has been something that we've all leaned into a little bit more. Understanding why we respond the way you do. So community work is hard. working with people from all different backgrounds, raised differently. Maybe some people lived in Rapid their whole lives. Some of us grew up on the res and just moved up here. Some have lived here for a long time, some not very long. And it's hard, but what we were able to do was to see the way that trauma affects us today, and understand that to us as much as we can in our own individual journeys. But that intergenerational healing, you know, I think about that, and I think about right away, you know, Sister Val and Chante and Auntie Kathy and our Unchi Bev. You know, we have the things that came out of that, the relationships were real, and they're really healing, you know, to have Unchis, healthy, loving Unchi, have healthy, loving aunties. You can have family outside of your own family that can do some of that healing for you, and we see that. And so this project has blessed me with sisters and aunties and Unchis, and that have provided support at times that almost nobody else would understand, because the work that we've done, we even understand the hard parts a little bit more.
Right. And I think the teaching and all of that, like the teaching that we learned from Unchi Bev and Tuli Kathy, and you know, just carrying this project forward, really serving as vessels, is that this is not an individual's project. You know, this is the community's. This story belongs to the community. And so naming that, but you know, Sister Amy being very intentional of how to engage community and part of that intergenerational healing. And I was really excited and happy to be part of this and very honored. In my previous role, I was executive director at Wakayaja Tawolokota. And I was working with young Indigenous youth who really needed that mentoring, needed that healing the most. And part of the project was creating the sculpture, Remembering the Children's site. And she provided an opportunity for us to be able to teach these young relatives, they're only 5-6 years old, about their history, about their family's history, but also them being part of that healing as well. And we actually went to it was Dale Lamphere, he's the sculpturist who was assisted by a Lakota artist as well. And the children were able to actually be part of the project, and they created toys and that are part of the actual sculpture themselves. They heard the story about Rapid City Indian Boarding School. They heard the story of how it could affect their families in a really good way. You know, we did it in a good way, but then they were able to create these things. And I'll always remember this. He was 5 years old, and we said, well, what do you think that this child who is now, you know, he never made it home, what do you think he would want as a toy? You know, because he never had the opportunity to play with. And he's like, I'm going to make a basketball for him. You know, another created a butterfly. You know, they were just thinking about things that they wish that these children had, but just think how powerful.
That's medicine.
How powerful that was. That's medicine for them. That's medicine for their families, and to be part of something forever. You know, these things, these toys they created are actually part of the sculpture itself up at the site. And so how important that healing, and it will continue. And so I know, you know, Sister Amy, a big part of this project, what she found, and with all the research and volunteers and working with partners and all of this, is that there is a healing center that is needed to talk about this, to talk about residential boarding school, to talk about historical trauma. And so,
yeah, can we talk a little bit about what's at the site now? What's adding on, what's at the site now? How do people access the site? And then what the future plans are like around a potential healing center.
Yeah, so the site was actually planned with the volunteer team. So it's 2017, 18, 19, worked with a landscape architect on design. And they, there was multiple meetings at that point too with community elders and spiritual leaders. And the point was to really leave as light of a footprint on the land as possible. And I think that's something that I'd like to just add really into this part was, we talk about the healing of the people and this community and stuff. But the one thing that I've seen that I just saw the other day, and it really resonated with me. So we fenced off the top. The community used to access it, use it recreationally. And And we don't have a problem with that, actually. But we just want the use of the site to be acknowledged as not recreational, but more spiritual. And so we did put up some fences and put up signs, letting people know that it is federal property, that it's trust land, and that Remembering the Children has a legal responsibility of managing the site on behalf of the tribes. And that fence went up about 3 months ago. And it's been up all spring and summer. And we're going to hang some signs on it too and make it more into like educational pieces for the site. But when I was up there last week, I noticed that the top of the site, there was a fire there last year, the last couple of years too, during construction. And people had been using it. But in this time that fence has been up, it's been 2 months, I noticed that the land on the top of the hill is healing. And like seeing things growing there that I didn't see there before, noticing that there's a lot of echinacea and there's team sea love on the top. And, but
don't tell all the Tanshi's that.
Hey, I know. I already put up no digging signs. Hey.
I mean, much braids downtown in it.
But that is so, and that's part of this, as we heal, the land heals. As the land heals, we heal. And like seeing that, I was just like, dang, this is 3 months of protection and prayers and water and, just of medicine. And to see the land so green and vibrant and all the medicines that are up there was really, I just recognized that. I was like, we're healing the land too. The land witnessed all of this. And so like part of our story is like bringing that peace back to the land too. Mm-hmm. So it was really, look forward to the future of the site just from seeing that one little piece. But so what we did was plan walking trails and benches. It's really meant to be a reflective, quiet space. There's a path that goes up the hill. It's about a half a mile. We have signage right now, working on signage for there's a vista point that we want to put some historical information. And then we have historical signage going up right now. It's a plaza with this sculpture and a memorial wall. And the memorial wall is really meant to be kind of like the Vietnam War, it's more of in memoriam and not like a cemetery. So not all of the children that passed away at the school are buried at the site. And we have all that information on the website, trying to make sure that their families and descendants are able, have that information as well. But it's meant to be a place where you can see their names, read their names. These names, some of them were forgotten completely for over 100 years. In the time that I've been in this job, we found 5 more names associated with the site. And so there's, it was really important to us to have their names public, where people read them and see them and that they're always going to be remembered and acknowledged. At the top of the site, we're working on an installation created by the 4 artists that are working with us. Our art commission has 4 all Lakota artists that are working on all of the art that's installed at the site will be selected by the art commission, and they've been helping with the art plan and the.
Who are those artists?
So we have Marty Tubles Jr., Ray Janice, Lynn Cooney White, and Daryl Nohart that have been working with us on that. And so we'll actually working on an installation that they would create together, and that's kind of timelined for next year. Right now, we're working through the complications of a multi-jurisdictional site. So 24 acres of trust land held by 3 tribes in the middle of a city municipality has been kind of challenging. So
LANDBACK's complex.
I know.
LANDBACK's complex.
Lots of legal agreements. And so we're working on an emergency services agreement right now, just because if somebody fell at the site, somebody broke their leg, we'd have to call BIA in Pine Ridge. And I don't know what their response time is, but probably not good for us. So we're asking people to contact the executive director, and all my information's on the website or on the Facebook, for personal, or if people want to visit or have a group. But it's closed right now while we work through those agreements. Also, in the political climate that we're in, we're trying to make sure that we get it right and that all of the tribes have a agreement that they can use for other instances like this, because there are other places that we have trust land and or that tribes own land. And so really working on an agreement that can be used in a way, used for the next several years to protect the sovereignty of the tribes and their jurisdiction in this case. So
absolutely. Yeah. So how can people help? Like I think the website is, you can go to rememberingthechildren.org.
Yep.
How else can people find out more about what's happening there. How can people donate? How can people volunteer? How can people show up to support Remembering the Children?
Yeah, so people can contact is all on the website. All the socials are active. The Facebook one's probably the most active. We do have Insta and try to keep people up to date with what's going on there. The memorial walk. So one of our commitments to those children was to have a memorial walk every single year. We carry their names from Sioux Park, where some of these children might have worked, up to the site of the Remembering the Children right now. That this year it's going to be on September 27th. It's a Saturday. The Saturday before September 30th is what I'm aiming for, really trying to connect the two events and get some education out about boarding schools and helping to do some community or involve community with that. But everybody's invited to that. We're always looking for volunteers to help with the logistics of the memorial walk. But keep on the lookout on the website and socials, because we're also going to be starting a friends, help, asking for volunteers and people to help with upkeep and maintenance of the site. We have we want to do some gardening there this fall and this winter. We have some plans. So just keep a lookout on the socials and I'll post everything on there.
Sounds great. And donate. I mean, Remembering the Children operates off of donations. So, please, for listeners out there, donate to Remembering the Children. Go to rememberingthechildren.org. Continue to support this work in the best way possible. Thank you for coming on this show, for both of you, and to share this story, to share this remarkable story. And, for the listeners out there, this is like a reminder to our allies and to our accomplices. LANDBACK is not something to be afraid of. LANDBACK, when Indigenous people begin to get their land back, it's actually better for all of us. And this is an exemplary example of that in action. And when we think about LANDBACK and the LANDBACK movement, let's continue to lean into the complexity of it, because every community and every jurisdiction and every story is unique to its own. This story, is unique to this land and to this place, but it's catalyzed this community forward in conversation. And I guess it's also a call to action for people in this community that don't let this stop at a memorial. That, this acknowledgement of what happened to Indian people and what happened to our land and the pain that still lives amongst our people, we still see it played out all along the creek. We still see it played out on local news. We still see it being played out on how our people are over incarcerated. We still see it played out how some of our people in Western South Dakota here have the lowest economic mobility than anybody in America, and are living in poverty and living in struggle. And that's why I think this idea of creating a healing center and a place that will continue to catalyze healing for the people here will be monumentous impact on our people. And it gives us something to not just say, hey, we're talking about the past, but actually we're talking about the future. We're talking about the ability of future generations to heal from what had happened, because trauma is also something we don't have to be stuck into. We have to work through it, but we don't have to be stuck in it. We can be free and liberated people, but we have to heal. We have to acknowledge what happened, and I see that this work has done that. So I'm really honored that you came on this show, that both of you came on this show, that we're able to get this story out there. And to everybody out there, check it out. Remembering the Children. Follow them on the Facebook. Thank you.
Indian Facebook.
All the aunties and uncles are on there, so you got to watch out, because for people who aren't, I'm not on there because I mean, Indian Facebook is pretty rugged,
It's pretty entertaining though. Probably missed some good stories.
But thank you for coming on the show, and we'll have you on again sometime to get more updates about what's happening in the future.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
Oh. Stay.
Perfect outro.
All right.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared of LANDBACK. Don't be scared.
This is a good one.